Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Let's start off with some satellite imagery here, and as we kind of play back through the afternoon and watch it again here, we can see just numerous complexes of thunderstorms moving all the way from the Four Corner states to the western Corn Belt and upper Midwest, and then also right here along a boundary stretch through parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt. We have big storms popping also here in pockets in the Northeast, but running right down the Appalachian Mountains. And of course, we can see the smoke from the wildfires in the western part of the United States. Now, just watching the last 16 hours or so of radar imagery, you really get a sense of what when we talk about these scattered thunderstorm complexes, kind of what it looks like here. A lot of them are driven by their own outflow, which means they tend to form and then take on their own paths forward and own timing here. And that's one of the more challenging things about forecasting these types of events, because as you watch this start over again, we can see that, look at the thunderstorm complexes coming out of the Dakotas through Minnesota, some of these doing damage, and then right here into Iowa, where earlier this week we did see some damaging storms right here in eastern Iowa and northern Illinois. A lot of damage to some crops in that area. Now, we're not done yet with this event, and if we just look at what we're expecting just today, this is for the remainder of the day here on Thursday. Moving forward, we're going to have to watch out for these storms. And I'd like to take you straight into our high-res model. This is the NAM, 18Z NAM that was just released late this afternoon. And we're going to watch those complexes of thunderstorms progress through the evening. I'm going to stop at about 10 o'clock tonight. Now, you still see lots of places in the east, through the Ohio Valley, down toward the south, storms. We just see them everywhere. But I'm most concerned about the redevelopment of the cluster of storms that's coming here through parts of Minnesota and Iowa, because right now some of the models are suggesting that those storms throughout the overnight hours tonight take on this linear structure to them. We call them squall lines, and they could produce some damaging winds that again hit some vital cropping area here for corn and soybean production. So we're going to watch that carefully. They move into Wisconsin as well. Now, in the overnight hours, these storms will likely remain elevated, and how far they press through Wisconsin into Illinois and possibly to Michigan and Indiana, we're just going to have to wait and see once the radar imagery gives us the first few hints of how these storms are going to take shape. But we're just not done there yet. As we go into the day on Friday, let's just get to Friday afternoon and evening. Once again, we see our next our next shortwave coming out of Montana, pulling into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And then you see the lingering boundary right in through here on which more storms are possibly going to form Friday afternoon and evening. Just a lot of scattered convection around that in this whole area. Well, let's keep playing this forward to see how things shape up through the overnight hours, and then getting here into Saturday afternoon and evening. And once again, we see the same thing happening. So there's a multi-day severe thunderstorm risk in parts of the upper Midwest and the western Corn Belt, getting back toward the northern plains. And outside of that, in the heat and the humidity of the air, all within this entire sector, we're going to see more thunderstorms. And then at the end of it, you can see what has now been upgraded to Tropical Storm Ida coming in on the NAM model. Now, we don't use the NAM to usually for tropical cyclones, but you see it down here. So the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, let's just go ahead and hit refresh, see if they give us a new one here. This is Tropical Storm Ida, as you can see here, named in the middle of the day today, and is expected to basically get up to hurricane strength once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, if you'd like to check out the longer video, the in-depth video, we kind of discuss what the conditions are like ahead of this, but the ocean temperatures in this particular area and what seems to be a lack of wind shear will allow this particular tropical cyclone to easily achieve hurricane strength. My concern is that by the time we get into late Sunday, early Monday, that it comes into Louisiana, that we could possibly see this get up to major hurricane strength. That's Category 3 and above. Again, I'm saying that not to build hype or to get folks overly worked up about this. It's just that the conditions here, I think, are going to be favorable. And Tropical Storm Nora, which is coming over here, you don't see it on this map, the influence, I think these two systems are becoming more separated, which means the shear off of Nora I don't think is necessarily going to affect Ida. So watch it, this National Hurricane Center, nhc.noaa.gov. Check it out every day if you're in this affected area. But it does appear it's going to come right up the gut of the Mississippi before making that turn through the Tennessee and Ohio Valley and eventually toward the Appalachian Mountains. Now, it's moving fast. This is not a slow-moving system. And just a reminder, the cone that you see here from the National Hurricane Center represents their historical average error at certain time intervals for forecasting. That's why that cone exists. Now, within that, we also use the models, and this would be from the latest European model. update from the 12Z, and all 51 members are represented here, and they clearly show that the most likely path at this point is just going a bit to the west of New Orleans, just as an example, and then coming up the Mississippi. Now, just something to remind you of, the strongest winds in these systems is on the right-hand side, and as I said, I think conditions will be quite favorable for this to undergo some rapid intensification. Some of my evidence for that was based off of what I saw Grace do in the Bay of Campeche last week. Whereas it came across the Yucatan as a tropical depression, it bumped up to a Category 2 strength system before coming into Mexico. So that tells you that the Gulf is primed for developing these storms, and it's about 4 days out from when it's going to be here in Louisiana. So I want to keep a very close eye on that. Bigger picture, over the next week, let's just shrink this up so we can see a little bit better. We have got Ida taking a track like this. We have Nora coming in like that. And we still have multiple short waves that come through here, increasing the severe thunderstorm threat in this area. Now, as the last of these comes through here and builds a low in this direction, there will be a lingering front right in through there against which Ida's going to have to push, which is why we do anticipate some heavy rain right in through here, and that will target an area. Remember last week, Middle Tennessee over on Saturday, we just saw to the west of Nashville, some places picking up between 10 and 18 inches of rain. So the flooding threat will be quite high with this system, but so will the storm surge, and so will also the wind threat. Will likely carry those strong winds through much of Louisiana. And just something to think about. Louisiana last year in 2020 was hit 5 separate times by tropical systems, the worst of which was Hurricane Laura. Just a quick recap there. Now, as of late, through this point in the month, this section of Louisiana and Mississippi has been a bit on the drier side of things. This is your month-to-date precipitation values, and you start to pick out a few areas that have been dry that we do expect some rain, like in this section here of the Corn Belt. Also in Indiana, could get some scattered storms helping to relieve the drought issues we're dealing with in central Indiana. But if you're outside of those 3 main systems, again, Ida, Nora, and the storms rolling through here and eventually on the front, I don't think we're going to be adding too much to this particular map. So we'll check in on it again at the end of the month as we begin September. So why don't we just dive into this and we'll do a multi-model comparison. We're going to go through this relatively quickly. Let me take you back to the beginning here. GFS is on the left, European is on the right. Now, as we play this through the next few days, we've already discussed the complexes of storms coming through all the way through Saturday evening that will be in the upper Midwest. So we can see them here Saturday evening. Again, that's going to be what we're going to watch. Outside of that, a lot of scattered storms in the Northeast, stretching all the way down to the Gulf Coast. One big difference between the models is that by the time we get to Sunday morning, let's just get it right to Sunday afternoon, the GFS is much more aggressive on the northward track. It's more quick, more progressive, getting the system onshore here, whereas the European lingers a little bit slower. At that point, there will also be a deeper low moving into parts of Ontario that both models have kind of keyed in on. I want you to watch the frontal boundary. That'll stretch back out of this. We're going to see that in just a few moments. The other thing is, the European model, very clear on what's going on with Nora. I'll put an N in it there. Don't see much of it at all in the GFS. So as we play this forward, what ends up happening is going out there to Monday morning, afternoon, and getting into the evening. Look at the European. The low is here, same in the GFS. The main frontal boundary stretches just like this. It's there in the GFS as well, so we're going to see storms along that. But the GFS has got a more northerly trajectory already. It's farther to the north with Ida, and the European's lingering a bit here. Now that's important because it's going to affect when this system makes the turn through the Tennessee Valley. And you notice that by the time I get you out through Tuesday into Wednesday, our next low is taking shape here, and it's going to start to spread storms, again, midweek next week through the western Corn Belt. See it right in through here? And that's going to happen as what's left of Ida spreads into the mid-Atlantic. And again, go back to July and early August, this was extremely dry in through this area. So we're now adding quite a bit of precipitation into that particular spot. Let's stitch it all together and go look at what the European model says for the next 7 days in terms of total precip. And you can see all 3 of these events taking shape. So here's the first with Ida, there's Nora, and the repeated shortwave troughs that come through here, initiating a lot of storms in through parts of the western Corn Belt. From the ECMWF, let's go take a look at the GFS, same time period. So ECMWF and then GFS. Now, what's important is to just compare, look at the differences here, and that's what I want to illustrate for you in this map. Just a quick reminder, these colors represent where the European is wetter, and these would be the GFS is wetter. So notice how the GFS has a farther to the east trajectory for the heaviest rainfall from Ida, whereas the European is farther to the west. But the European carries more of that heavy precip here through the Tennessee Valley into parts of Kentucky and eventually along the Appalachian Mountains, whereas the GFS is wetter here over parts of the southeast. Now, without the GFS making a real go of Nora, you see that that's where the European is much wetter. And the European is really drawing a lot more moisture out of the storm systems coming through the northern plains compared to the GFS as well. And that extends back into the Canadian prairie too, as you see here. So let's take the drawings off there and just take a good look at this map as we compare these two models. Now, interestingly enough, again, in week 2, there's better agreement. They both basically paint this same picture. Watch. I'll take you back to, let's just go to next Thursday. And now let's play forward. Ready? You see that the models are progressively bringing through the trough, through the Great Lakes into the northeast, and even setting up here by Monday, September the 6th, another trough here with a ridge to the south, which means fast jet stream flow, doing something like that. And if we just keep pulling the jet stream winds through here and diving them into this trough, you're going to open this whole area up to just quite a bit more thunderstorms. And that's what the models are suggesting. The drier conditions you see in the Gulf and over Florida, I have to call that into question because this is moving toward the peak of hurricane season, which is on September the 10th. And the ability for these models to pick up on tropical systems, out to 15 days is limited. They're much better inside of a week time frame. But overall, a lot of recycled moisture plus just weak boundaries moving through here like we've been seeing. We see a broad sector of North America here favoring above normal precipitation, which had been well forecast by the European model. So when does it start to dry out? Well, if we take a look at the latest data, which just came out from the European extended run, we call these the weeklies. I'm showing you September 9th through October the 8th here. And one of the bigger trends has been the drier conditions due to higher pressure building in here over parts of, the Ohio Valley and the Tennessee Valley through the southeast and mid-Atlantic. And that's been a drying trend there. But this area for much of the front half of September does appear to be stormy. Now, if this La Niña continues to develop, as we project it will, we will start to see this all back off as we get into the month of October. But before I get to that, I would like to at least share with you what's going on with the temperatures because we still have a broad area here and also in the northeast where there are heat advisories. This is all air quality issues here from the smoke from the western wildfires. We have excessive heat warnings down over parts of the south, but that's going to change in a hurry as Nora gets there. So over the next 5 days, what are we expecting? Now, the cooler weather stays in place here, and we're generally seeing to the south of it temperatures anywhere between 3 and 10 degrees Fahrenheit above average most days through our next 5 days or so. So the heat's going to stay on there. But you start to see the cooling effect at this point of Ida coming into this direction. And going out there day 5 through 10, now we see the changes I was expecting. So Ida moves in through here. Cloud cover is going to keep this area cooler, but take a look. Where the heat is now, with Nora coming in there, we're expecting that to cool off. And this has taken us out now to the beginning of September. I'm going to start to have a discussion here in the next week or so about any potential early frost that we could be discussing because it does appear that coming out of the Canadian prairie into the northern plains, if we continue to see those troughs digging in, that'll have to be something we're going to have to discuss. Nothing right now. I just don't see it at this point. But if that pattern sticks around through mid-September, well, that'd be climatologically accurate for when we'd have to start considering these things. Okay. Now, again, I'm talking pretty far to the north here, but I wanted to bring that up as we look forward. Now, longer term, let's just flip this over to that same time period. This would be September 8th through October the 8th. And again, the models have favored this as cooler. And there's going to be time periods here running through the eastern half of the United States where we do build in that heat again, 3 to 10 degrees above normal. And we also see waves of ridging building back to the west as the jet stream stays relatively unblocked. The blocking is all happening over Europe, where a deep cutoff low is going to sit over parts of Eastern Europe. But the North Pacific jet stream, it keeps moving. I don't see anything kind of shutting that down. So when we put that together and look at some of the longer term things, I just want to bring this discussion back to a quick outlook here on La Niña. So we continue to see some cooler water emerging here. There's plenty below the surface to come up, but I got to get those trade winds more consistent and stronger out of the east. And if that occurs, we do have a drier look at October. Drier, not dry, but a drier look at October here in the midsection of the country. But our La Nina, again, this will be weaker than what we saw last winter, but it'll still be a La Nina that will likely influence the pattern. And where we're going to watch that most carefully will be in South America. Let's shrink this back up so you can see it. What I'm talking about here is that we had seen extensive drought in southern Brazil. That lately has been relieved by a few fronts that have passed through that area. Now, not complete relief, but some relief. But as we get into September, this is the most critical area to be watching. After September the 15th, that will be where planting will happen most quickly. So we'll need to take a look at the MJO, we'll need to take a look at La Nina, and see if it's going to do anything to delay the onset of the monsoon. That'll be critical for South America. And starting in September, I'll be releasing a separate South America video for us to watch as well. So I'll wrap it up there. I appreciate your attention and have a good rest of your weekend. And for those of you in the path of IDA, keep an eye on nhc.noaa.gov. Thanks.